Hello and welcome to the C-SPAN Review. My name is Mike and I want to thank you for tuning in. Today is June 8th and we are reviewing Open Forum for all the calls, the data, the sources. So let's start the review.
What's on the agenda in Congress and the latest news from Capitol Hill? And then USA Today White House correspondent Joey Garrison joins us with the latest from the White House and previews the week ahead. Also, Steve Clemons of the National Interest discusses the ongoing conflict in Iran and other foreign policy issues in the Trump administration. C-SPAN's Washington Journal is next. Join the conversation.
This is the Washington Journal for Monday, June 8th. It's now been 100 days since the war against Iran was launched. President Trump defended it over the weekend in a sit-down interview with Meet the Press. On Sunday, Iran fired missiles at Israel for the first time since April, and overnight, Israel responded, and President Trump is weighing in this morning. On Capitol Hill, the House will work to pass an immigration enforcement bill after Senate Republicans pushed it through last week, and Democrats are on edge over the fate of Maine Senate candidate Graham Plattner's campaign. But we'll start with the war. We'd like to hear whether you support or oppose U.S. military action in Iran now that we've hit the 100-day mark. Here are the numbers on screen to call if you'd like to weigh in on that or another topic.
Dead horse.
Republicans 202-748-8001, Democrats 202-748-8000, and Independents 202-748-8002. We also have a special line this morning for current and former military members. You could call in at 202-748-8003 to weigh in, or reach out online on X at CSpanWJ, Facebook.com/CSpan, or you could text in right there also at 202-748-8003. That 100-day mark of the war was technically on Sunday, and we've heard from President Trump throughout the weekend on it. He sat down with Meet the Press for a lengthy on-camera interview that was taped on Friday in Wisconsin. The president visiting the battleground state there to hold an agriculture roundtable. But this interview with Meet the Press focused mostly on the war and the fact that it is reaching the 100-day mark after the president initially said it would only last a few weeks. Here's what he told moderator Kristen Welker when asked about it.
Sunday will mark 100 days since the first strikes. Your Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said that the war had concluded. And yet just this week, Iran attacked U.S. allies in the region, calling it retaliation for a set of U.S. airstrikes. Is the United States at war with Iran?
Well, they've been largely decapitated, and I call it a military exercise because people would rather have it called that. It's not a big war for us. It's not. We have the most powerful military in the world. I built it, frankly. I built it in my first 4 years, and I'm using it a little bit in my second 4 years. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft is gone. They might have built it up a little bit over the last 4 weeks during this little ceasefire that we did at the request of some very good people, very, very fine people from, actually from numerous places. As you know, there are a lot of people involved, but from Pakistan in particular, the Field Marshal and the Prime Minister. And we're very close to having a deal, and if we don't have a deal, we'll do it one way or the other. Either way, we win.
So that was President Trump on Friday while in Wisconsin. The bulk of that interview aired yesterday on Meet the Press. We have heard from the president in just the last hour weighing in on Truth Social, but as Israel and Iran have been trading fire, the president first posted early this morning simply, Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting. And then in a message posted just before we got onto the air, he wrote, both sides, Israel and Iran, are looking to do an immediate ceasefire. Final negotiations on peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in the way. The blockade will remain in place and in full force and effect until a final deal is reached. Things should move quickly. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Something the president was also asked about in that Meet the Press interview is his ongoing relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and potential tensions between the two of them as this war has dragged on. Here was that exchange from Meet the Press.
You have openly said you've been frustrated by Israel's continued bombing of Lebanon. Are you and Prime Minister Netanyahu on the same page?
Yeah, we are. We get along very well. We've been great comrades. We did a very, very big number on a certain country that was nothing but trouble for 47 years. I disagree with him on a couple of things.
On Lebanon?
I'd like to see Lebanon have a better life. I'd like to see a more surgical attack on Hezbollah. I think it should be more surgical. And we can help them with that, or we can recommend Syria. Syria is doing a very good job of cleaning up their act. They have a very good leader. They have a leader that's really done a good job in a short period of time, and he would love to help.
Are you demanding that Lebanon be a part of the short-term deal that you're negotiating?
I'm not demanding.
Okay.
I think they'd like to see it, but I'm not demanding.
The president also granted multiple phone interviews on Sunday where he was asked about his relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the ongoing questions of who is calling the shots in this conflict, especially now that we're past the 100-day mark. On the Democratic side here in Washington, we've been hearing consistent criticisms from Democrats about the president's handling of the war. Here's what Virginia Senator Mark Warner said on Fox News. He's the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee.
I unfortunately believe that President Trump's war of choice may go down as his biggest folly, because while there has been some incremental progress, we don't have regime change. I think the new crowd is worse than the prior Supreme Leader. We know we don't have the enriched uranium, and I think it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to get it out. The best we can hope is maybe more observers. Unfortunately, they still have about 70% of the ballistic missile capability, and they've got these very cheap drones, and frankly, we should have taken the Ukrainian technology ages ago. And now we've got, even if with a ceasefire or the president declares victory, a Strait of Hormuz issue that I'm not sure is going to go away. And we see that in higher gas prices.
So that was Virginia Democratic Senator Mark Warner. The Associated Press writing this morning that the Israeli strikes overnight came in apparent defiance of President Donald Trump, who told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he doesn't think Israel needs to respond further. In his first comments since the attacks, the president wrote online earlier this morning, Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting. Let's hear what you think about this conflict and whether or not you still support the U.S. military being involved in Iran. We have some callers on the line, and we're going to start with Peter calling in from Longport, New Jersey, my great home state, on the former military line. Good morning, Peter. You're on with us.
Good morning. Good morning. I don't support the war. I don't support war. You know, there are not winners and losers. It comes to a compromise. And
Looters of
I
this
think
summer.
compromise is the way to go. People will talk about winners and losers, but what about compromise?
And I'm curious, what branch did you serve in, and was there any point throughout the last 100 days that you saw the justification for this war?
Well, I see no justification for it. I was in the Army in 1966, 1967, in Germany.
And what do you make of President Trump's comments, especially in that Meet the Press interview over the weekend? He was pressed multiple times on the fact that he had campaigned in 2024 on no new wars. He now claims that this was necessary and that this isn't necessarily a contradiction of his claims. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't believe anything he says. I'm sorry.
Point blank.
The way I feel about him.
All right. All right, Peter. Thanks for weighing in.
Thank you.
Let's go to Shar calling in from Daly City, California on the Democratic line. Good morning. Hopefully I said your name right.
You did say my name right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on the war?
I currently oppose the war, although at one point I did think it was making me feel safe in the United States of America. So even though I'm a Democrat, I did feel like it was a good thing. But now I'm just coming to the realization that it just is wasting a ton of money. You know, people are wasting effort on something that just isn't doing good for the American people.
You're out in California where people across the country know gas prices are pretty high there. Is that something that's talked about amongst your family and friend group on a daily basis, and how the war has pumped those prices up higher?
I don't really discuss that with my family. I mean, I personally don't drive a car. I take rideshare Uber around everywhere. And that works for me, but I'm sure that's affecting the Uber prices too. But I don't know about that for sure, though, but it may be affecting Uber prices. But I mean, quite frankly, I feel like gas prices is something that I wasn't even thinking about, but I think in reality, it's just mainly the spending where we could be spending on infrastructure or other things like that in America, maybe, and even just the fact that people are wasting effort on trying to cause conflict when there should be peacemaking.
I'm curious, too. There's obviously votes are still being counted out in your state of California after last week's election. How do you think the war has played into the local and state races happening there?
I definitely would think that I'd say probably a lot of the Democratic positive results are from the fact that people are opposing the war.
Got it. Well, thanks for weighing in, Tushar. Appreciate you
Got
calling
it.
in. Let's go to Herbert calling in from another battleground state, Michigan, on the Republican line. Good morning, Herbert. You're on with us.
Good morning.
Republican on the board.
I've been a lifelong Republican, but this is ridiculous. We need to remove this 6-year-old man from office before he bankrupts this country. I do not approve of this war. This is so ignorant. This man is a goober. I don't understand why people can't see this. He's going to bankrupt this nation.
Call that guy a fake Republican.
What are you doing? Please, people, wake up before it's too late.
Herbert, you said you're a Republican. Did you vote for Donald Trump in any of the elections he's run in?
I vote for someone this ignorant. The man is just uneducated. He wants to be a great man. He wants to do great things. I believe that. He just doesn't know how. And he doesn't listen to people that do. Look at him. He has news reporters in his cabinet. He has no one to inform him. And if he did, he wouldn't listen. It's just unreal what this man is doing. We got to remove him from office. I don't care who they put in there. Just put someone with a brain.
What part of Michigan are you calling from?
I'm from south of Detroit, Woodhaven, Michigan.
Woodhaven. Okay. I'm curious because I'm pretty familiar with Michigan. My wife is a U of M grad, and I reported in Southwest Michigan. Obviously, the state is pretty diverse when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to cities. In your neck of the woods, how is the war being talked about? Is it focusing on gas prices? Is it the agriculture conversation?
All the above. I mean, look at the farmers. I mean,
it's all just terrible.
Michigan, and the average family farm is suffering. The big conglomerates with $1 million tractors and $100,000 pickup trucks, they're fine. They get all the money. The average small farmer is dying because of this man.
All right,
just because of him.
This
is so stupid.
Let's go to Bruce calling in.
The farmer situation has been going on for decades with globalism. I live here in Central Florida, and I remember coming down here as a kid when we lived in Georgia, and almost all the tomatoes in the country were coming out of Florida and Ruskin, and we used to go out there and pick them, and they were so good. Now you can barely find them out there. It's just subdivisions.
From Stratford, I think Missouri, on the former military line. Good morning, Bruce. You're on with us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to say there's a lot of uproar about the costs of this war. It's not really war. We haven't been in war since World War II.
Can you expand on that? Because that's actually a point that President Trump made in his interview on Meet the Press. He says he goes back and forth between referring to it as a war and referring to it as a conflict. So explain more of what your take is.
Well, my take is factual. Has Congress declared war?
Man, I'm not even doing the map. Sorry, folks.
No, it has not. We've been in conflicts that I don't agree with. But I totally agree with this one, and I'll tell you why. A lot of uproar about fuel prices, energy prices, et cetera, et cetera. And when fuel goes up, everything goes up. We all know that.
Are you frustrated with the president's handling of this conflict so far?
The only thing I'm frustrated with is we've been negotiating with Iran for 47 years. We've made multiple agreements with them. They have not lived up to any of them. You can't negotiate with these people.
Bruce, are you still there? Maybe not.
Yeah, I'm still
Oh, you're still there. Sorry. Go ahead. What was the last point you were going to make?
What would the cost
All right,
be?
come on. Let's go, fellas.
What would the cost be if Iran set off 11 to 12 nukes that they've already told our negotiators before this all started, before the conflict started, that they had that much enriched uranium? What would the cost be if they set 11 or 12 of those off? And they've already proven that they can hit every capital in Europe, of every nation in Europe already. And who knows, they might have an ICBM that can reach the United States.
ICBM.
And gas prices are not higher now than they were during the Obama and the Biden administrations. And we're getting something.
These guys riding in the bucket.
Worldwide peace and security. Iran needs to be dealt with. It should have been dealt with a long, long time ago. 47 years of talking to these people should prove to everybody talking's not going to work with them. They've killed thousands of our citizens, bombed our military bases, taken our citizens hostage. They're barbarians. They're living in the dark ages. They need to be dealt with decisively and once and for all.
Thanks for weighing in, Bruce. Appreciate that. AZ Tech is writing in on X to us saying, bring all of the troops back to the States, close still foreign bases. The economic impact will scare most countries. The defense impact will leave many of the socialist countries up for grabs by nefarious characters. Thanks for weighing in on X. You could, of course, continue to reach out to us there at Cspan WJ. Let's play more of President Trump's interview with Meet the Press. He was asked about his criticisms of his pledge to not engage in forever wars and the fact that this conflict is now at the 100-day mark. Here's what he said.
So you're saying you didn't break your promise, and yet, Mr. President, in your first term, you held to that promise, and it was so fundamental to who you were as a candidate to a first-term president. What changed? Because you insisted no new wars.
First of all, I didn't guarantee no war. Why would I have built the strongest military in the world? I built our military. I inherited a terrible military. We had no equipment. We had nothing. I built a tremendous military. Biden gave a lot of it away, but it's still a relatively small portion compared to what I built.
But you said it over and over again, Mr.
Why would
President?
I build a military? Now, I didn't want to use this, but I'm doing
Wait a minute.
you and everybody else a big favor. In the midst of the greatest stock market in history, in the midst of the most successful country, because as you know, in the last term, we were a dead country, Kristen. I know you're a big liberal. We're a big progressive.
No,
but
I'm just a journalist.
We were a dead country.
I'm just a journalist.
A couple of years ago, we were a dead country. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world.
I'm just a
And
journalist.
at the all-time hottest point, which is probably now, believe it or not. We just had all brand new stock market records today. But at the hottest point in the history of our country, I took Scott, Howard, I took Pete, I took everybody into a room. I said, I have to do this country, this world, the Middle East, Israel, everybody a favor. You have Iran. They're going to have a nuclear weapon. Barack Hussein Obama signed the JCPOA. It was a horrible deal. Horrible deal. Listen to me. It was a horrible deal. It was a path to them getting a nuclear weapon. They were very close to having a nuclear weapon. I terminated the deal. Then I sent the B-2 bombers in about 9-10 months ago, and they totally obliterated the site, and I saved it. We had a choice. We could let them have a nuclear weapon, or we could go along and have some beautiful days.
That was President Trump speaking to Meet the Press over the weekend. You could look up many of the president's old campaign rallies throughout the years. He did say on multiple occasions he would start no new wars, no new forever wars, so that question was a valid one. Barb writes in on X from Walnut Grove, Illinois. She says, I support U.S. military action in Iran at this time. Iran and proxies have been inciting violence by attacks in Kuwait, Bahrain, Strait of Hormuz, and Israel, and should not have nuclear weapons. Let's go to another caller. Sheila calling in from Youngstown, Ohio on the Democratic line. Good morning, Sheila. You're on with us.
Oh, good morning. It looks like Netanyahu is the one running the show, and if he stops his war, then he goes to jail. So he has every reason to continue this. In that interview, I just watched that interview. Oh my gosh, President Trump was so rude to the interviewer, but basically President Trump lied about saying, he said
These reporters always treat Trump so fair.
he wasn't going to start a war, and you know, if it was so imperative, why didn't he start this war in his first term? He's making money hand over fist with this war. Also, I just want to mention quickly, Project 2025. You guys had on Kevin Roberts from the Heritage Foundation, and he said, well, why did Trump, he was asked by one of your callers, why did Trump distance himself from Project 2025? He said he didn't know anything about it. And Roberts said, oh, well, people were criticizing it, so we knew we had to lie about that. And so those cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, they're on their way after the midterms. So good luck with that, people. We're going to be trying to find food, because we can't afford it here in Youngstown.
Sheila, I'm curious. I used to cover Ohio's congressional delegation, so I know your state well. How do you think the U.S. Senate race
reading
there
his resume.
is being impacted by the war at all? Maybe we lost her. Well, Youngstown's a great section of Northeast Ohio. She mentioned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I want to read a portion of this piece from Axios, published yesterday, updated this morning. President Trump told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday not to retaliate against Iran's missile attack and allow more time for diplomacy, according to a senior U.S. official and an Israeli source familiar with details. Trump's effort to restrain an Israeli response signals his administration's push to keep escalating Israel-Iran tensions from derailing ongoing negotiations with Tehran. Trump told Axios before the call that he planned to urge Netanyahu not to retaliate against Iran's missile attack, which Tehran said was a response to an Israeli strike in Beirut earlier Sunday. The senior U.S. official said the Trump administration didn't give a green light to the Israeli strike in Beirut. Trump told Netanyahu during the call to hold off because we are close to doing something good in terms of a deal. That was Axios reporting. And President Trump has faced multiple questions about Prime Minister Netanyahu and his influence on this conflict. Let's go to John calling in on the Republican line from not far from here in Arlington, Virginia. Good morning, John. What are your thoughts on the war?
I have two problems. First of all, the Iranians signed the non-proliferation treaty for what that's worth. It means they said they wouldn't develop a bomb. Secondly, they did comply, according to Trump's own people, with the JCPOA up until the point where we pulled out of it, and then they started doing stuff which I would have suggested they didn't do, but they did it anyway. But they did comply with that. What we should have done was use the JCPOA as a lever to then increase contact with them and push them back on other issues we had problems with. And the incident that I'm concerned about recently was this April ceasefire agreement. We had our vice president say, oh, well, maybe they didn't understand English. They were talking about the Pakistanis, of course, and the Pakistanis have used English for over 150 years, and they use it all the time, and they're a member of the Commonwealth and all that good stuff. But they sent out two messages, and if anybody wasn't clear about the first one, the second one was very clear that Lebanon was part of the ceasefire agreement. The next morning, the Israelis launched this attack where in 10 minutes, they dropped 100 bombs. They killed 350 people. I am convinced they did that because the Hezbollah agreed to the ceasefire, and they were probably exposing themselves, and the Israelis saw that as a chance to get at them. I'm very disappointed that people haven't taken a harder look at that April 8th Israeli air attack in more detail, because that's just an indication that we didn't tighten things up enough that we could proceed with this ceasefire, these ceasefire negotiations. So that's my issue.
Thanks for weighing
Oh,
in,
my
John.
God.
Obviously, the news over the last 24 hours that's notable is this is the first time that Israel and Iran have traded fire since that ceasefire deal was reached back in April. So it's been about 2 months of a pretty consistent ceasefire. That's why this is so notable, and President Trump seems to be weighing in up very, very early this morning. Let's go to Georgia. Calvin is calling in on the Democratic line. Good morning, Calvin. You're on with us.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay. The only thing I want to ask is, why did Trump rip up the agreement? I mean, that's why we're in this situation today. He should have never ripped up the deal that Obama made. I really think he ripped up the deal because he was either jealous of Obama or he just wanted to do the deal himself.
Did you watch the president's interview with Meet the Press? Because he was asked about that several times.
Yes, I watched it, but he had no evidence. He just said it was a bad deal, but he had no evidence that it was a bad deal. Where's the evidence that it was a bad deal?
Mm-hmm.
That's why.
Ed, I wanted to pull up, this is from Fox News talking about the president's interview. It says, President Trump tore into former President Barack Obama's Iran nuclear deal on Sunday,
He tore
accusing
into him
of empowering Tehran while defending his own military action against Iran. Trump said Obama signed that stupid deal where he paid them billions and billions of dollars. He thought he could bribe them. Trump made the comments after Welker challenged him on Iran's nuclear program and argued Tehran moved closest to weapons-grade uranium after Trump withdrew from the 2015 nuclear agreement. They were developing it during the nuclear deal, Trump claimed. You don't know that. And they write, Trump directly blamed Obama for Iran's nuclear progress, saying the former president's agreement failed to stop Tehran from advancing toward a weapon. So, Calvin, I'm curious if you're still on the line. Do you buy President Trump's argument? Because it doesn't sound like it. You feel like the deal that President Obama had reached, even though it did have a shelf life and it did have an expiration date, you think things were in a better state under that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. I am saying that. Absolutely. Because, I believe he ripped it up because he was jealous of Obama. Bottom line. He did not want Obama to get the glory of stopping this way, and he just made the situation worse by ripping up the deal.
I'm curious, before you go, Calvin, you're, of course, in the battleground state of Georgia. You have a really big U.S. Senate and governor's race down there this fall. Do you think there's a political impact that the war is having on the ground in your state?
Well, definitely. Most definitely. This state is gonna be blue, 100%
We'll
blue
see.
after the November election. I could almost guarantee that.
Almost.
Well, thanks for weighing in. We'll be watching those races
Weighing
closely.
in.
Let's go
That's
to
his
John calling
catchphrase.
in from Pittsburgh on the Republican line. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
What's on your mind? How are you feeling about the war now that we're at the 100-day mark?
I agree with it, but I'm more concerned about the elections in California.
What are your concerns about it?
Why did Democrats consider it over once they have enough votes?
Sorry, go ahead.
And to think that everybody wanted Karen Bass back doesn't make sense.
So I want to read a portion of Here, 1 second. The president has been weighing in a lot on California's elections. And as a reminder, while we're going through this, if people want to call in, we'd love to hear from you as we are talking about the 100-day mark of the war against Iran. The lines are Republicans 202-748-8001, Democrats 202-748-8000, Independents 202-748-8002, and if you are current or former military, we have a line for you 202-748-8003. We'd love to hear from you. But John, you brought up California's elections. Here's an article from Time. It says Trump calls California primary rigged. Here's what's really happening. It says President Trump repeated his claim that primary elections in California were rigged on Sunday as the state continued to count the votes from several key races. Echoing his false claims about the 2020 presidential election, Trump suggested that the pace of the vote count in the closely watched gubernatorial and mayoral primaries and Republicans losing ground as mail-in ballots were tallied was evidence of fraud. The president said they're dropping fast because it's a rigged election, referring to Republican candidates losing ground as mail-in ballots were counted. 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with. You know, why are they doing that? Because they are cheating on the election, he continued. When pressed on Meet the Press whether he had any evidence for his claims, Trump replied, "All I have to do is look." He then attacked Kristen Welker, the moderator, as crooked and stupid. They write unsubstantiated claims about the California elections have spread in recent days among Republicans and right-wing commentators. John, the argument there, and I understand the criticism, and it's something California officials acknowledge, it takes them a very long time to count these votes because it's a large state, over 50 million people, and most voters do vote by mail there. Have you seen evidence, because the president was asked about it and he could not offer it, evidence of actual voter fraud out there, because officials on the ground are saying there's not fraud, this is just their process, it takes a while, but it's transparent and people can go to the election ballot counting centers and watch the process. So what are your concerns in more detail?
How do you prove fraud when it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks to count the votes? I mean, mail-in voting is fraud in itself.
Even though President Trump has voted by mail and he encouraged people in the 2024 election to vote by mail?
Yeah, because we had to play the same game the Democrats did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks for weighing in, John. This conversation about California, I'm sure it's going to come up more in the show because of the claims that President Trump made. I want to play, for context, we have this clip from the Meet the Press interview where President Trump, if you haven't seen it, he actually ended up walking out and kind of storming out of the interview after frustrations. Now, Meet the Press has said they were also dealing with significant weather struggles. They were taping this in a barn on a farm in Wisconsin. At times you could hear pelting, pouring rain outside on the roof of the barn. It was apparently hard for Kristen Welker, the moderator, and President Trump to hear each other. But here was the exchange where the president talked about California, also talked about the proposed anti-weaponization fund he wants the government to create. So here's that exchange.
It's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with it. You know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
that? All I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen to people, and let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's a...
They never go and look for their own evidence. Look at that screenshot. Snarling.
That's how they count the votes in California.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
continue. You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no credibility.
And then these people never went and looked at the claims.
Never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd.
You have more evidence. There's more evidence.
They excuse it.
presented.
Let's talk
your
about
elections
you
in
went
this
to
country.
court.
We're like a third world country.
But, sir,
your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked,
Mr.
and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President,
Thank you, darling.
I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know. I
I've sat in the
traveled
rain
all the
with
way
you
to
for an hour,
Wisconsin.
on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr.
A
President,
country can never be great with a dishonest
Listen,
press.
we
Come on,
traveled
let's go.
all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
Stepped on the
So
mic.
that was the contentious ending to President Trump's interview with Meet the Press that was taped on Friday in Wisconsin. It aired in full yesterday. But as you could see, the topic of California's elections, among other things, led to the president leaving a bit abruptly. Let's return to some callers as we talk about this, as we talk about the Iran war surpassing the 100-day mark. Angela is calling in from the Great Buckeye State, from the city of Columbus on the Democratic line. Good morning, Angela. You're on with us.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day. So, yeah, I called in because I really wanted to talk about the war, and then I heard that last clip, so I kind of wanted to comment on that. I didn't get to catch Meet the Press. My son graduated this past weekend.
Congratulations.
Yes, at 16. So, yes, shout out to 2026. So, basically, first off, because I know we have a line for our soldiers, my heart and soul goes out to all of our military. I'm in my 30s. I lived through the 9/11, and I just feel like this is so reminiscent, which causes a lot of unease. We kept hearing the war in Iraq would be over in a few weeks, so now we hear that now with Iran, people have a hard time trusting it. We heard weapons of mass destruction. Now we're hearing nuclear weapons. My question is, because I hear Trump saying, like, the agreement, the 2015 nuclear deal, Tehran was still creating nuclear weapons. We gave them billions of dollars. Is there any evidence that we were giving Tehran money and they were still creating nuclear weapons during that 2015 deal?
That is a good question. While you're talking, I'm trying to look up some stuff there. But I go to beyond your broader point. I guess because one of the previous callers mentioned it, did you feel like things with Iran were in better shape when the Obama era deal was in place, even though that had a shelf life and that did have kind of an off ramp?
Yes, so I do understand that there was a shelf life to the deal, so it would need to be renewed, and so that can be a point of contention. I am someone that I need to know exactly what section, like this section has this loophole, and this is why this is happening. I haven't fully read through that. Like, I have read the Big Beautiful Bill and Project 2025, but I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I've read the entire JCPOU. But that's why my question is, was there an agreement in that for us to give them money, or is this a claim that has been unfact-checked by the president? Because that's genuinely something that I don't know. But if we were giving them money, I want to know why. And if we're not, why is the president saying that? Like, what was the point of getting rid of this deal? Because I don't see the transparency of, because of this section on this deal, this is what was causing the problem, and we want to redo that. Now, I am surprised after 2 months of a ceasefire that they have now fired shots at each other. What was it that sparked, like, the war to start up again, or to break the ceasefire, I should say?
So I'll provide a couple of points of context. First, on what led to this latest flare-up, the Associated Press does a good point outlining it. They say the Iranian military's joint command said that it is halting its offensive operations hours after Israel and Iran began trading fire early Monday in retaliatory strikes that threatened to drag the wider Middle East back into a full-scale regional war. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels claimed an attack on Israel and said Israel-affiliated vessels would again be a target in the Red Sea. Tehran had warned of retaliation after Israel struck Beirut's southern suburbs without warning earlier Sunday. So it appears that Israel striking Beirut earlier over the weekend is what led to this latest exchange. I read this part earlier in the show, but the Israeli strikes came in apparent defiance of President Trump, who told Prime Minister Netanyahu that he doesn't think Israel needs to respond further. And the president wrote on Truth Social this morning, Israel and Iran must immediately stop the shooting. To answer your other question, Angela, I was looking up this New York Times article. It doesn't cover everything in terms of an instant fact check, but talking about the JCPOA, the original Obama-era nuclear deal, the New York Times writes, in fact, Iran's promise is in the first paragraph of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal negotiated by the U.S. under President Obama and several other world powers that Mr. Trump has repeatedly denounced. It says Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons, states the agreement's preamble. Mr. Trump withdrew from that agreement during his first term, calling it weak and inadequate. Tehran then accelerated its nuclear program in response, but continued to insist it was not pursuing atomic weapons. So I know that doesn't answer all of your questions, but that's kind of some context, if that's helpful.
No, that's actually extremely helpful. So from what I hear in the preamble, it states that they would not create any enriched uranium or nuclear weapon, but under any circumstances. And it doesn't seem like any evidence was given that. So if they were creating enriched uranium, then they forfeited their deal. So therefore, the contract is null and void. But and then yes, then Trump would be correct. It's weak, and then throw it out if he had evidence that they were, breaking their deal in that preamble. But it says that he just thought it was weak and voided that contract and withdrew from the 2015 deal, and then they started creating enriched uranium because they were under no obligation to do so because Trump had pulled out of the deal. And so, in my opinion,
they were doing it the
there's
whole
evidence that they were
time.
creating nuclear weapons or enriched uranium prior to Trump pulling out of the deal, then the ending the deal is not justifiable.
Oh, my God,
Thanks
Angela.
for weighing in, Angela. The president
Thank you.
talked about this at length in that Meet the Press interview and repeatedly alleged, as he had throughout the last 100 days, that in his view, though he has not presented that evidence, he believes Iran was weeks away from having a nuclear weapon, and that was part of the justification for this conflict. So there's a lot there. It's helpful to chew over with all of you. A reminder to call in if you want to weigh in. We're talking about whether or not you support or oppose U.S. military action in Iran. Sunday marked 100 days since the conflict was launched back on February 28th. We have numbers you could call into if you're a Republican, 202-748-8001. Democrat,
good luck getting in.
202-748-8000. Independents, 202-748-8002. And a special line for active and former military members, 202-748-8003. Keep the calls coming. We'd love to hear from you. Let's go back to Virginia. Keisha is calling in from Arlington on the Independent line. Good morning, Keisha.
All right, started a timer on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Just wanted to make a few points here.
This lady is not independent at all.
Number one, the Strait of Hormuz, if I remember correctly, has never been closed at all until Trump decided that he wanted to go to war. Correct me if I'm wrong in that. Number two, I think a lot of Trump supporters, it pains me to see that they are swayed by someone who keeps repeating an untruth, a lie. Just because the lie is constantly repeated will not make it the truth. And that is what makes Trump so effective, is that not only does Trump repeat the lie, his cabinet, his supporters, or his surrogates get on TV, on CNN, on ABC, on CBS, on Fox, on Newsmax, and they keep repeating the same thing over and over again to make people believe that it is a truth. No matter how many times you regurgitate and you repeat the lie, it does not make it the truth. So I say that to say that if there was such an imminent threat of nuclear weapons, what actually defines an imminent threat? Is it weeks? Is it months? Is it hours? Is it days? And if we bombed Iran last year initially and everything was obliterated, exactly what was obliterated for you to have to come back and start another conflict? Explain to me what was obliterated. Another question. So I'm hoping his supporters hear what I'm saying and kind of ask themselves those questions.
Ask them.
Not only that, changing the Department of Defense to the Department of War kind of gives you an idea of where Trump's head is. Why would you rename the Department of Defense to the Department of War? When I hear the Department of War, it comes across as very aggressive, that you're wanting to go out and start a war, as opposed to the Department of Defense, where we set up that department to defend ourselves if we are attacked. But now we have become the aggressor. Another thing about the Iran nuclear deal that Obama negotiated, I think we can all agree that it may not have been a perfect deal, but it was some type of framework to have Iran and their enrichment be monitored by independent surveyors. And from what I have seen, from what I have read, they seem to be holding up their end of the deal. Donald Trump, as everyone wants to say, people have Trump derangement syndrome. I think it's quite the opposite, because Obama lives rent-free in Donald Trump's head. I firmly believe that Donald Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal to get a better deal than Obama, because he is some way obsessed with doing better and topping Obama. And many people may disagree with my statement, but show me where he does not want to seem to be, he, meaning Trump, want to be better than, or seems like he can execute.
Every president wants to be better.
Joe Biden or Barack Obama. And I firmly believe that because
Joe Biden is not hard at all.
Is so focused on trying to be better than Obama and Biden, it is providing a disservice for the country as a whole. Most importantly, his supporters that seem to be living in rural communities, that also use SNAP benefits, that also use Medicare, that also use Medicaid, that also need the fertilizer, also have to put gas in their car, also have kids in college, also that depend on the Department of Education that's being gutted, that also are being affected by perhaps unclean water, bad air quality. Yet this man is here gutting everything. He is gutting everything.
Gutting everything.
And if the United States wants to become what it is spoken about or sung about in
this is supposed to be an independent caller.
The Star Spangled Banner, it is going to take years for all of what Donald Trump is doing to be
unbelievable.
Fixed and
He lets this
so I just hope his supporters just kind of sit down and ask the question: why was the Strait of Hormuz never closed until February 27th? How imminent was Iran really? Because if Iran was so dangerous, I don't think Iran was responsible for September 11th. I don't think Iran ever attacked us knowingly. When Donald Trump
Here,
came into
Keisha,
office,
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna interject, because you made a lot of points. I did pull up something to talk about specifically the Obama era Iran nuclear deal that I'm gonna read through before we go to our next caller. But thank you for weighing in, and thank you for touching.
5 minutes. They let her go on and on and on
things so thoroughly. Factcheck.org did a piece
thoroughly
back in March when the war.
That is not thorough. It was just fucking her ranting.
First was breaking out, and they talk, it's a lengthy piece, I won't read all of it, but they say, while the president's claims that the JCPOA would have brought Iran closer to having a nuclear weapon and his withdrawal stopped that, the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation estimated that the withdrawal sped up the so-called breakout time, or the time that Iran would need to produce weapons-grade uranium that could then be used for one bomb if the country chose to do so. They write, the center estimated as of November 2024 that the breakout time went from 2 to 3 months before the deal to 12 plus months during the deal, and then after the U.S. withdrawal under President Trump, the breakout time was reduced to just a couple of weeks. So that is an indication of some of the timing. They also wrote, citing a coordinator at the Center for Arms Control and Nonproliferation, Emma Sandifer. She said that last June's airstrikes likely lengthened the breakout time, but the IAEA hasn't been able to inspect the damaged nuclear program sites since then. And you had talked about President Trump mentioning the strikes last summer. He talked about that in his Meet the Press interview over the weekend. He claimed that what he calls the nuclear dust, which is Iran's leftover nuclear material, is, in his words, buried under the equivalent of a couple of mountains right now in Iran, and that the U.S. and China are the only countries that have the infrastructure and the technology to go in and safely excavate that material. A big part of the negotiations now is whether or not Iran will allow the U.S. or China to come in and do that and either destroy the material there or remove it. So again, it's complex, but that's just one example of what's being discussed. Thanks for listening to that rant. Let's go to, and that rant, I mean on my end. Let's go to Pat, calling in from Illinois on the Republican
on both
line.
ends.
Good morning,
Both.
Pat. You're on with us.
Good morning. First of all, congratulations on, I think, breaking the all-time record for the length of an anti-Trump diatribe that you left completely unchallenged. But anyway.
If you have a response, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to comment on the Trump interview that was causing so much pearl clutching with the reactions to Trump's ending the interview quickly. And I guess rather than focus on the president's reaction, I'd love to see you or anyone do some side-by-side comparisons of the behavior of the press when interviewing past presidents compared to the behavior when they're interviewing President Trump. Kristen Wilkins' behavior was just unbelievable in the sense that she thought she was in a debate with the president. Obama, Biden, even past Republican presidents, reporters never came in with the idea that they were going to argue. Every question she asked, she'd ask a question, he'd give an answer, and then she'd explain why his answer was either a lie or completely wrong, and then she'd quickly say, well, let's move on to something else, because she wanted to basically leave the impression that, well, he lied about that, now we'll go on to something else he lies about. So, that style of interviewing is pretty transparent and is what is so often used against Trump, and then the press acts surprised when he reacts to it differently than presidents in the past who were never challenged, or if they were challenged extremely gently. And so, I think that behavior and approach of the press is something that should be noted also. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to comment on your question of the previous Republican caller about what specifically was going wrong in California and why mail-in voting that has kind of become a catch-all phrase, why that was a problem. And, of course, you, like so many in the press, quickly say, well, gosh, President Trump encouraged it too. But the problem is really not whether the ballot comes in by mail, in which case it is postmarked, and while that introduces a lot more potential for malfeasance than a voting day system. The real issue is that states like California mail out ballots to every registered voter. It's not requested. They mail it out. So that means they get into the system tons and tons of ballots, official ballots. And we've heard a lot of information about how incredibly inaccurate voter rolls are. So they're mailing out ballots to addresses that no longer have people. Those ballots gets tossed around, and I've seen lots of articles about organizations such as unions and liberal organizations that will collect these at apartment buildings where tons of ballots just get tossed in boxes for inaccurate mail, and they are collected. Those are the ballots that result from this universal mail-out of ballots. Those are the ballots that then empower these groups to create so many false ballots and have them on the ready to send in if needed. And it's not so much through mail-in, it's through the ballot drop boxes where there are no postmarks. So it's impossible to prove when they were actually dropped in the post boxes. So, I mean, I think so many in the press, and don't mean to necessarily insult you, but you did the same thing with your question. You want to focus it on mail-in ballots, and many critics will use that as a catch-all term. But the real issue is the mailing out of the ballots that are far more than are ever that are not ever requested, and to far more people than are legitimate voters.
Could I ask you though, Pat, on that point, because I've been trying, as we've been covering the California elections over the last week, I've been trying to read up on it as much as possible as well. And to your point about the ballots being sent out, what also takes California a long time to count them is the processing and what they call the curing process once those ballots are back in the election counting centers. And those are open to the public. There are live streams happening. So I guess, do you still have those concerns, even though officials there say, because the state, and I just looked it up, this Time Magazine article says mail-in ballots account for around 80% of the votes in California. According to the Secretary of State, about 13 million of the approximately 16 million votes in 2024 were cast by mail, and the California system has one of the longest curing processes in the country, allowing voters to correct ballot issues by re-signing if their signature doesn't match during verification. But as they have these election processing centers, it's all open to the public. Candidates from both parties are encouraged to go. You could see one of those centers there on the screen. So is your concern, I guess, matched from what you were talking about with the drop boxes to the pretty transparent process they have at these processing facilities?
Well, again, I think you're mixing in a lot of things to make it more confusing than it has to be. A long curing process is really irrelevant if you start out with ballots that were filled out and brought in through ballot boxes by unauthorized people. The point is, you got to zero in on the salient points. How long they take to count it and how many people they come in to watch them count it. It doesn't matter. It's the point is, where do these ballots come from? Were they mailed out and were they filled out by the correct people, or were they dropped in a box with incorrect mail somewhere, and then that box was picked up and emptied because, of course, there's no security around apartment buildings, mailboxes, or the areas where people deal with their mail? That's the issue. You don't confuse it with how many people they can come in and watch them count the ballots. The point is, where did these ballots come from, and was there any kind of chain of custody once they mail out millions of ballots to people who'd never requested one? And in many cases, when you look at voter rolls, which of course California and so many other blue states want to hide from the federal government and refuse to allow to be audited or to be corrected, that's the issue. It's not whether or not it's mailed in. It's not how they count them. I presume they can count up to hundreds and thousands, and counting isn't the problem. The problem is the ballot security and how many ballots are floating around out there, making the situation ripe for abuse.
Well, Pat, thanks for this dialogue. I think it's an interesting conversation. California officials, and I encourage you and everyone else to look up how they've been explaining this what they acknowledge as a long counting process, but they insist that it is thorough once those ballots are back in these processing facilities, and they root out any ballots that are illegitimate versus legitimate. But thanks for weighing in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Before we take a break, let's hear from one more caller, Beverly, calling in from Apex, North Carolina, on the former military line. Good morning, Beverly. We've been talking about the war and a bunch of other topics, but what's on your mind?
I just wanted to acknowledge that when it comes to the war at this point, I believe that it really needs to stop. I say that because I'm watching how the deficit is in the trillions. I'm watching how there is a problem with money for training when it comes to the Army. I'm looking at the fact that we have a stockpile that has been depleted. I'm watching how we have so many men and women sitting, doing their duties, not knowing when there will be some finality to their actual being. I'm also very concerned about how things are being led when it comes to the leadership of our military. And what I mean by that is this. When I was on active duty as an officer at the Pentagon, our Secretary of Defense did not have a faith leader of any type coming into the area.
Oh, sorry.
And they did not
Struggle
have
streaming.
a faith leader who had already told his constituents that he hated different groups of people, black people, people based on religion, people based on things that are not at the core of why we have a functioning military. The military's purpose is to, first of all, be apolitical, and you are there to stand and defend the Constitution and protect citizens from domestic and foreign terrorists.
And Beverly, just to interject, you're implying and talking about current Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the very public religious movements and wording that he has used in briefings about the war, in worship ceremonies at the Pentagon, and all of that. Thanks for weighing in on that. We have a very busy Monday, so I'm going to tease our next guest now, but thanks to everybody who called in this first hour. Later in the program, we're going to be talking more about the war and other foreign policy. We're going to have a great guest, Steve Clemens, who's with the National Interest, will be here in studio. But first, right after the break, Congress returns to session this week later today, and joining us to talk about what to expect from the House and Senate is Rachel Schilke from Bloomberg Government's Arm.
All right, that's it on that one. Holy cow, that was a long, boring one. I like the I like the ones when we rattle through the calls. We only had what, 12 calls in an hour. I mean, one lady went on for 5 frickin' minutes. Here's our map. We had 3 former military, 4 Republican, 4 Democrat, and then that was the one lady who went on. The one independent is the lady that rattled on for frickin' 5 minutes and 11 seconds. I was just joking this morning when I posted that live, and I said, you know what? I'm going to record this, and I sure did. And it 5 minutes and 11 seconds. This girl too. She the verbal crutch. I think. She may have said it like 2 dozen times. But anyway, that's this review for June 8th. And Taylor Popolars was a host. We had 12 calls. That's so low. So low for an hour. Sometimes we'll clock 23 to 25. Let's see. We've got 10 states hit. 9 different unique cities. 12 sources cited, and pretty much all of them are left wing today. Except, let's see, Wall Street Journal. Yep. I'm pretty sure all of them are left. So we'll go over that in the daily breakdown. So if you made it this far, like, subscribe, and comment and tell me what you think. Thanks for watching, folks.